Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We have a terrific show today with two wonderful poets, Maureen Owen and Ed Friedman. Maureen Owen, former editor-in-chief of Telephone Magazine and Telephone Books, is the author of Erosion's Pull from Coffee House Press, a finalist for the Colorado Book Award and the Balcones Poetry Prize. Her title, American Rush, Selected Poems, was a finalist for the LA Times Book Prize, and her work, A.E., Amelia Earhart, was a recipient of the prestigious Before Columbus American Book Award. She has taught at Naropa University, both on campus and in the low residency MFA Creative Writing Program in Naropa's Summer Writing Program, and edited Naropa's online zine, Not Enough Night, through 19 issues. Her newest title, Edges of Water, is available from Chax Press. She has most recently had work in Blazing Saddle, Blazing Stadium, Positive Magnets, Posit, Brooklyn Rail, Hanging Loose, Walkers in the City, and the Denver Quarterly. Her other books include Imaginary Income, Zombie Notes, A Brass Choir Approaches the Burial Ground, The No Travels Journal, and Untapped Maps. The precision, the use of real physical details, a wonderment and sensuousness, along with vitality of line and willingness to experiment, are what I find in Maureen's poetry. An astonishing and refreshing poet. Here's Maureen Owen.
Hello. So I'm going to read first from a manuscript titled The Caregiver's Log, which is a little journal about caretaking my mother. And the first piece is kind of a lead-in prose piece to the poems. And the title of this prose piece is Smacked Once, Severely on the Nose, Left Me rolling to the far outside of the bed. It was the much-needed rainy season, and the rains began. The first night, it was already sprinkling when Mom and I left the main house after dinner and a Hallmark episode of Murder, She Wrote. I walked in front holding her hand, a bright flashlight in the other, and my brother behind us shined his flashlight as we crossed the driveway, skirted the garage, and descended down the mossy, soft stairs, pocked now with wet, slippery oak leaves. My brother left us inside the door and, ducking the thickening rain, trotted back the way we'd come. Turning the electric heater up to high, I got Mom dried off and into her flannel LL Bean PJs and fleece-lined slippers. Helped her wash up and brush her teeth and then climb into bed. Climb is the appropriate word. The bed was a white elephant in the room, literally. Huge, covered with a snowy white down comforter. It seemed the parts of more than one bed had been requisitioned to create its mismatched bulk. The headboard leaned not quite snugly against the wall. The mattress came up against it at an unfortunate angle, hanging slightly over the bed springs on all sides. A bountiful, solid mattress that could have been enough by itself, now combined with the bed spring and frame, rose to a lofty eyrie. But it had been a long, exhausting day, and once I loosed into its warmth, my critique of its artlessness vaporized, and I felt as though sinking into the puffiness of a vast marshmallow. But that night and the nights that followed had other than rest in mind. Her eyesight failing, my mother needed several of the dimmable ceiling lights left on quite brightly. Also the lamp on her bedstand and the bathroom light. A rich golden glow one sees in the paintings of 19th century Dutch masters infused a specific focus of the room, polishing the wooden table, reflecting in the glass bar. Two of the ceiling fixtures beamed blindingly into my eyes. I pulled a tangle of covers over my head. Though we'd raised her pillows, Mom's breathing was labored and interrupted by outbursts of violent coughing fits. Suddenly, from a restless sleep, she would ratchet straight up forward from the bed, flailing her thin arms in all directions, hacking so piteously it seemed the air in the room ripped into strips. A tiny skeleton, whirling, jerking, her skin transparent in the eerie amber light. Trying to help, I brought cough drops, held water to drink, handed her Kleenex. At last, she would lie back, slowly drifting into a kind of dream, she whispered and spoke from brokenly. After each bout, I would ease into my side of the bed, attempting not to disturb her, lay without moving, and stare up into the wooden beams. Through all, it had begun to rain in earnest, a pouring rain, thrashing across the skylights, wailing against the cabin shutters. A trio of embalmed geese hanging on fish line near the skylight, wind and thunder outside stirring their dusty feathers, bounced a little, veering in flight. Were the taxidermied quail shuddering? It was impossible not to hear a scratchy hum of tiny, shuffling claws panicking. Mounted deer head eyes moistened, and I couldn't help but feel they were staring at us. Cobwebs in their antlers gusted ever so slightly, their soft noses so black, so still. Night after night it rained. Was I in hell? Night after night for a solid month. Then I took her home with me. And this is some poems from that manuscript. All duets fracturing. I tuck her oxygen cord over the coat rack above the doorway, through the title page of The Kitchen God's Wife on top of the bookshelf, so she won't trip on it, getting out of bed during the night. This is titled, How is the Moon So Round If It Does Not Roll? Called awake, 3 a.m. Take this cover off me, it's too heavy. This quilt is feather light though, and it's very cold tonight. Get it off me, too heavy. I folded back, rearranged the sheet, and lay Winnie's shorter crocheted prayer blanket atop her legs and feet. I'm freezing, she pines. Get me a lighter blanket. This is the lightest cover we have. Why are you standing there with your hands in your pockets? Help me. Actually, my PJs have no pockets. It's 3 a.m. It's 12 degrees outside. I'm so tired. Through blinds, a loopy moon stares at me. I unfold the comforter wistfully and gently open it back over her. Are you mad you had to get up? She amends. And this one's a little lighter. I said sandwich wraps. She thought I said salmon traps. How about soup for dinner? What kind of soup? Chicken pot pie soup. Oh, yes. Heat soup, said table, set up oxygen. What are you doing? She asked between breaths. Making soup. What kind of soup? Chicken pot pie soup. Oh, good. Are there crackers? Sure thing. It's ready to eat. What are we having? Soup. What kind of soup? Chicken pot pie soup. Take your time. It's hot. This is good. What is it? Chicken pot pie soup. This is titled I Would Become the Black Sheep of the Family, Obliquely Included. When I sneeze, she jolts and flutters. Why are you sneezing? What makes you sneeze? Everyone sneezes once in a while, I say. You sneeze all day, my mother charges. No, I don't. I rarely sneeze. Oh, she snaps. You sneeze all the time. A recurrence. Whenever I do sneeze or cough, so that I become self-conscious about sneezing or clearing my throat. I contort to prevent my sneezes. I begin to count them. Am I sneezing too often? This has never occurred to me before. This is titled, In Space, Surface Tension Will Force a Small Blob of Liquid to Form a Sphere. Oh, went, stiff tule, rhythms gone haywire, cicadas twilling timber, beetles at the grapevine, sultry, chewing, and almost violence in these clouds. A witness goes missing, translucent as a porcelain, with binoculars on the future in her hand. Eyesight failing, her independence casts a spell as she needs me read her B of A statement, questioning every entry and forgetting, questions me again on same. I repeat addition, subtraction, final balance, date. A layer cake of confirmation, her balance after each check signed. She worries, will there be funds enough? Health insurance, Medicare, prescription pills, utilities for her cabin home in Truckee, where only holy water rising, holy, holy, holy water rising. No one is living now. Even without lodgings. Dark racetrack quiet, everyone absorbed, thoroughbreds nodding. We drive back to the barns, find a vacant stall, a kindly loaned tack room, or empty horse van to sleep in, gathering towels and toothbrushes, and from a spigot at the end of the shed row, she'd monitor our ablutions, our scrupulous brushing of teeth. Bleached peaches. Lasix, Eliquis, metoprolol, potassium, naproxen. Washington Nationals just won the World Series 6-2 over the Houston Astros. Sports are her job, especially baseball and football. San Francisco, her beloved town, Giants and the 49ers. Games we tarried late to view. Ice water, toothpick, Kleenex, oxygen, cookie. Folds of the dish towel. Time never stops, only we stop. We die, Katie emails. Ulysses says, stop referring to the ashes as your mother. It's not her, it's just ashes. She's gone. When you clap your hands, vibrations of air molecules travel in a wave, causing vibrations in pressure. How long do these various frequencies hang in the air? Round her Celtic green urn, saints and hauntings of my Irish girlhood, miracles, rosary, sacraments, psalms, confession, prayers, liturgy, myths, scripture, requiem, pale ghosts of her mother's stories. And the last one from this manuscript is titled, I'd hire a cook, mince a scallion, boil a whale's tooth. Gusts blunt the pine tops, flat fir boughs whirl, float back, carve a circle, sway in place. Sloppy sails, low slung, a tad too oversized, flirting, braces, hymns, this roof is hers. And then these poems are from a different manuscript. Some of my titles are pretty long. So this is a kind of a long title. Throw on a layer of verdure beside him. What do stars do before they go supernova? Or the angels looked ordinary. She waited a few minutes. And the poem. But then you had to land. The instant makes such economic demands. Knobby, conjectural. And what is really engaging is the step, step back, step pattern of the wooden floor behind the elbows of the cellist, situated in an unidentifiable space. Let me just not indicate unexpected situations captured in images, raw cookiness, swivel and lean back. Father painted what's unexpected. No one really comes up to you as you are leaving the party. Puffed olives and the soul that had been so still. Kind of a long title on this one. The theater of war is not theater, not a play, or a chorus from behind a grill work. To not to want to put a meaning to it, so much invisible, the war is invisible. Summer's community of rasping hummers, full-throated chorus under the billowing gauze curtain, invisible. August always makes me think of Faulkner, the leaning, long, slow weight of the heat, the heaviness of bodies, great expanses of thigh, languid, locust and catalpa, rustling, motion, whispering to herself. As though that detail of Rembrandt's red slippers in Susanna and Die beiden Alten breathed at the dark ochre of their placement. But into the very core, kneading like herding above blue skies, white clouds, warbling, conversing from the barbecue next door, heads bob and pulse the fence top, late summer floating breezes, trees. It's kind of this has a very long title, sorry. The third horse was a shadow of the first horse on the second horse, or accidentally calling you back just to say goodnight again. I liked her shirt, strips of a dusky field caught in dazzling bands of the setting sun's rays, released in shoots of light, where dense clumps of gray, glowing gold foil clouds parted, which settled over her arms. Gesso and watercolor paint on sugar pine, nice hair. And this is titled Just Another Day on Mars, or Let's Look at the Map Later. The shadow of the ant moves at exactly the same speed as the ant does, only a little to her right, levitating over the terracotta, almost skimming, almost sailing on a salt tile sea. The wars have ruined the palace, powdered interiors, sprawling wigs, the flat, pure surface of the land turned into a source of mockery. It winds along only as a kind of release, waiting for them to arrive back. It starts with, in the distance of the egg tempera, a dense grove of trees, quickening, then ominous, so ending up completely. It starts with being pushed aside above the surface of the water, simply too many mountains to acquire. It begins pliable, a red, red sand, a red, red sand. Moon standing on a Joshua tree, slicing ground, cinnamon. The bushes still bulge, where I said, you alchemize, glazed in an anchoring torrent of elms, our episodes strewn, ripping fabrics to the elms, come off their rollers, churning, swinging in the maddening air. The elms come thrashing, where'd the billowed flounce, the dash of taffeta, where'd all this confusion lashing as though a terrible music claimed us, and then the elms appear to canter at us, so as not to being separate, the wide sleeves of their elbows and knees, their brows sashaying, tossing at us, ballooning at us. Do you believe the leaves are talking to you? Do you believe the leaves are talking to you? And this is a short set from a different manuscript. The first one is titled Alizarin, a red pigment, crimson dye, bluish, more towards purple than orange, or talking sky with socks. None the bolted arugula, scraps of motors, fireworks, damp undercover umbrage, soaking in flora. To have watered the watercolor till washed, it has fallen on the petals like a drawing, colored so faintly, traces are untraceable in the dense field of paper. When giraffes argue, they swing their heads, a sling on long necks, whomping each other on the side. Colloquially, they can be a journey of giraffes. A tower of giraffes seems unstable. Though a trilogy of hearts beat, theirs is no patience for being petted, despite a cuddly appearance. Sewing textiles, seeking pattern on my own eye, cut up all my clothes to make them better. Now they just have holes, organdy in moonlight, spangled spots in place of fingerprints, timid above us, heads in the clouds, over dry savanna plains, routinely struck by lightning. They don't drink much. And this piece is titled Wabi Sabi, which is a Japanese expression meaning the acceptance of imperfection is a kind of perfection in itself. Wabi Sabi. Shirley's nickname was Shirt and Ray. They had 10 kids or 11 and lived in the San Pedro docks housing. A big padlock with chain encircled the refrigerator door, so all the food wouldn't get eaten. Frances, their eldest daughter, tall and blonde and so beautiful. I was 10 and she was about 16, I guess. Frances leaned out the window on the summer night, laughing, joking in a white Spanish embroidered blouse, passage to a foreign shore. I wanted to be like her smoky, sweet voice, full of fun, teasing brothers, making all the cousins laugh, including my brothers and I, recent kin, our stepdad, Shirt's baby brother. When we stayed over, all us extra cousins piled into one big bed, about 7 or 8 of us, older kids telling scary stories to the younger, diving in and out of sheets and covers. On a visit, their dog parenting puppies. Shirt gave us one. liver-colored spots, floppy ears, and a peachy nose. We named him Lucky. And this last piece is dedicated to Bill Berkson, who passed away. Titled, Everyone Has Lost a Memory. She pokes me as the altar boy hoists a long-poled crucifix. Look, Jesus has a broken arm. The snapped forearm swings rhythmically on its pinning. Marilyn Monroe never takes her gloves off through the whole performance. The other singer has to do all the finger snapping. Time to get out the thread, the swishing of a detail veers. Perhaps our brains do all the guesswork, winking. We see the nose and upper mouthpiece of the Iron War mask, fashioned with tiny latches shaped as doves. And no, heat, thick and soundless, baffles the leaves, but the tree shades itself.
Thank you, Maureen, for such
Thank you.
transfixing, wonderful reading. You see so much and you put it so concisely, and the poems for your mother were just loving, poignant, clear-eyed, well observed, and I just loved your reading. We have a couple minutes left.
Thank you.
And if we have time to get two questions in. The first one is, they're both simple questions. When did you write your first poem?
I'm sorry, what was it?
When did you write your first poem?
Oh, in my life. When I was about 9 or 10, I first wrote the poems. They were like, I was influenced by Irish songs. So my first poems were like ballads, only they're very short lines. And they're usually about things like butterflies and stuff like that. And I tortured my younger brother by reading them to him for hours. They went on and on, horribly.
What is it about the poetry form that attracts you to it?
I guess it's the sound, the lyric, and the way that you can merge sound and imagery. It's a kind of a sightful music or something. So I love that kind of milieu.
You know, before I introduce Ed, I just wanted to say that both of you, I never have met you before. You've never met me before. It's such an honor and a pleasure to see you both and hear your writing. And the one thing I love about both of you is not only your poetry, but the contribution you've both made to the poetry community, in particular, the work that you have each done at the St. Mark's Church. I started going there when I first started writing poetry in 1966, and I went there Wednesday and Tuesday nights, the first time I ever read my poetry in public. And Paul Blackburn came up to me and said some nice things to me, but I just love that place. To me, St. Mark's Church is the #1 poetry center in America. And so thank you both for your contributions to that. And thank you once again, Maureen. And now I'm going to introduce Ed Friedman. Ed Friedman is the author of 11 books of poetry and prose, including the Black Star Pilgrimage, Front Word Books, and the Telephone Books, Power Mad Press, and Humans Work, Helpful Book, as well as Mao and Matisse, Drive Through the Blue Cylinders, and Two Towns, all from Hanging Loose Press. La Frontera, Lingo Mats, and Ideal Boy are collaborations with visual artist Kim McConnell. The New York Hatline and Away are collaborations with visual and performance artist Robert Kushner. During the 1970s and early 1980s, Ed played guitar and sang in various bands. He appeared in performances and videos by Ed Bowes, Robert Kushner, Dan Graham, and others. From 1987 to 2003, Ed served as the artistic director for the Poetry Project at St. Mark's Church in New York City, where he also co-edited the project literary magazine, The World. Ed has been friends, co-workers, and been published by Maureen Owen. He is ever so pleased to be reading virtually with her on Harry's Poetry Hour. Ed Friedman's poetry contains camaraderie, musicality. It's mindful, personal, satirical at times, always surprising, told with an exactness and an excellent use of language. Here's a marvelous poet, Ed Friedman.
Thanks, Harry, and thanks, Maureen. It's always wonderful. We've only read, I think, maybe once as featured readers before, but what I remember when we were in Detroit was that you, for some reason, wanted to read first. And by the time I got to the podium, like the room was charged with poetry. Like my work had never sounded so good as having read after you. Let's see. I'm going to switch back and forth between my word processing screen and the Zoom screen, and I hope that you'll still see me on camera when I do that. My printer wasn't working today, so I couldn't print everything out that I wanted to read. So we'll give it a whirl here. I just wanted to say, my mom died recently, and I've been, in Los Angeles taking care of her affairs. And, I wanted to put a reading together that resonates with my current state of mourning, but I just want to say it's not all sad. I'll start with an occasional poem that I'd forgotten I'd written, and I rediscovered it among her things. Without You, for Mom, Mother's Day 2007. Without you, maybe I'd be a little soul, a mindful gas cloud drifting in space, or the barest thought of a charging black rhino. It's impossible to say, Mom, but here I am, full grown, solid. Watch me inhale, then blow out carbon dioxide, which feeds the trees and flowers around here. I'm especially proud of the oaks and the weevils who consume and lay their eggs in the acorns. I'm sure if they knew how much I have exhaled all these years, they would send you a Mother's Day greeting. Thanks for loving and raising big lungs over there. The begonias and tree slimes send along their appreciation too. Since spring of 1979, I've kept a journal called Space Stations. In it, I record the present moment of writing, which includes descriptions of my surroundings and my physical state, my memories, thoughts, and emotions, quotes from what I'm reading and or collections of materials collaged from those sources. And I work on various writing projects. The entry I'm about to read comes from a small book called The Funeral Journal. It contains some interchanges with my mother just after my father died. And short poems loosely styled after Japanese tanka also appear. And there's some prose poems in this entry that became a work called Away. Also, as always in this journal, there's dialogue pulled from the transcript of the 1970 Apollo 13 spaceflight. So, Saturday, January 20th, 7:11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. My last day in LA for a while. Tonight, Mom and I are going to a dinner dance to pick up Dad's award. Mom, at least it'll be a nice dinner. Cough, cough, breathe. Switch on the music. Nothing. Fiddle with the controls and cord. Okay, I've got the headphones plugged into the microphone jack. My chest and nasal passages are irritated. Dead man walking. The Spago Cafe with all the mosaics in it. Big coughs. I really need to go downstairs and steam my lungs, but if I leave my room, the day will officially start and I'll never get back here. Capcom. First row, your AGS on? Space capsule. My what? Space capsule. My what? Oh, yes, go ahead. Space capsule. Okay, go ahead. Space capsule. Okay, give me a few more seconds, Jack, and I'll keep it all out, okay? AGS System A. That's in FC. PCAs are going off. Why do they need the ISO valves and the ascent feed in? I have no idea, but they're not asking me. Transactions. Mom and I went to Book Soup and exchanged some presents. I traded the book on Bill Moyer's PBS poetry series for the Cubist poets in Paris, an anthology. Mom exchanged a Wallace Stegner novel for some boxes of note cards. Earlier, we were at Kinko's on Wilshire and Highland, arranging to have some thank you for your expression of sympathy cards printed. They were going to cost $120 at the print shop we went to on Thursday. At Kinko's, they were about $40. Cough, cough, phlegm's coming up. Is there a yoga position for clearing the lungs? Call Deepak Chopra or IKS Iyengar to find out. Winter white moonlight flocks across cold field to eye you quietly. While I alone remain clean and cheerful, not bothering anybody. How sad one is with the waves. This morning I dreamed that a poem started coming to me out in the garden. I really thought I had something. Jack and his pud were farming spuds. When I got here to write, Ken was still asleep in bed. He had left the desk all messy, so it took me a while to clear some space. Then he woke up and wanted to talk to me. Then Mom came in, and Bob Kay came over to visit, and I had to shoo everyone away. Mom and I were in the theater waiting for Dead Man Walking to start. Mom, so Marvin said, Alan and I exchanged confidences. Alan was my father. Alan and I exchanged confidences of a very intimate nature, and his confidences are completely safe with me because, as you may already know, I never remember anything anybody tells me. Me, that's me. Ha ha ha. You know Marvin was the one who was trying to help me stay out of the army when one of my knees was injured. Mom, Marvin or Lou? Marvin. I went over to the office on Wilshire Boulevard and he took x-rays of my knee when I had fluid in it. He told Dad, we'll just go fishing and see what we find. Dad must have asked Marvin if my knee would disqualify me from military service. Dad didn't want me to go to Vietnam, though he always wished he'd been shipped overseas in World War II. Mom, he thought that combat duty would have made him feel like a real doctor. You know, if he'd stayed in the army long enough to collect one more paycheck, they would have promoted him to major. No, I didn't know that. I was proud of Dad for blowing it off. What did he need another decoration for? He was done with the army forever. He had to go into medical practice and figure out the rest of his life. Mom, 6 weeks later, we were married. Mom, I can't believe I'm not married. I was looking at the singles events in the Jewish Journal. Nothing could be more repulsive to me now than the idea of being with someone else. Some of those old putzes, they don't have any attention at all. Your father, except at the end, always had some energy and pizzazz. He was always interested in things. Overtoned river, the reflection of moon, invades the deep waters, sudden heavy volume. In the dawn, I have become a forgotten tide, declining over the stones. On the white path in a spring garden, you do not come, asleep at dawn. The way I go in is heavy and cold, smoothed edge to edge, tucked beyond footsteps, drawing near. The way I go in under a line of pepper trees, fleur de bain scents, the swept outward stray airs. According to Han Suyin, Mao was allowed to take command of the Chinese Communist Party because Zhou accepted responsibility for the collapse of the Red Army. In actuality, it was the Russians' flawed military strategy which resulted in the Red Army's decimation. If resolving differences had been left to Mao and the Russian agents of the Comintern, the alliance would have splintered and dissolved. Zhou could see that Mao was correct and that the Russians had the wrong idea about how to wage revolution in China. The Russians would never admit their error, so if Zhou hadn't intervened and been willing to play the fall guy, Mao would have forced a split between the Russian and Chinese Communist parties. Zhou understood perhaps better than anyone that preserving party unity among revolutionary forces was as important as the correctness of the party's line. That's how Suyin portrays him. If we stay together, if we can continue to work as one, something good will come of this. Mao left all the interpersonal negotiations to Zhou. Eventually, the Red Army was down to its last 4,000 troops. They were at an outpost in northwestern China. When Suyin describes the terrain as yellow loess, I visualize the landscape of the movies Yellow Dust and the Silk Road. Wang Ping, I'm supposed to make a list for her of good movies to watch. Dead Man Walking. That's what one of the prison guards announced as Sean Penn's character was led to the room where he'd be executed by lethal injection. First, a drug to anesthetize the body so there would be no external signs of struggle. Then a second injection of antihistamine to eliminate the possibility of an allergic reaction to the poison. Third, a shot that arrests the breathing and other life functions. I couldn't believe that Dead Man Walking was the movie Mom and I ended up going to see last night. We'd been looking for some good lighthearted entertainment. But then we opted for what seemed most interesting. At one point, Mom leaned over to me and whispered, "This is heavy." Tears. Mom, when I asked Judy why Dad turned so blue, she said that maybe he ruptured a ventricle. His heart exploded. I can believe that. The only thing that could have finally killed Dad was having no heart left to fight with. More tears. If you travel long enough, you go where no one goes. Two dancers in flowing gowns open ornamental fans and raise them towards each other to create an archway. Through the fan arches, our entire army parades into an endless dark cavern. We hum an instrumental version of a famous song we can't remember the name of. Why won't it come to us? The title. Why is the melody so durably present and the words so indelibly far away? Yesterday, I felt a relaxation in being with Mom, a solace I hadn't experienced in a long time, maybe since I was very young. We laughed about how Dad would slip dirty dishes back onto the table in order to avoid running the dishwasher. Generally, after a meal, he'd rinse the plates and glasses and leave them in the dishwasher until eventually there would be enough to warrant running the full load. But then he'd forestall running the dishwasher a while longer by reusing some of the rinsed, i.e., dirty plates. Mom, I told him I didn't want any of his dirty dishes on this table, and he'd say, "They're perfectly fine. They could have been crawled over by cockroaches," but he didn't care. I have a funny family, don't you think? Dad was the funniest, and now he's gone, though the rest of us don't entirely pale by comparison. I think I'm going to stop. I could write more about Dead Man Walking, but maybe we'll leave that to Siskel and Ebert. It's their job. Back to the notes here. I'm going to read a few poems from the book Two Towns. The traveling I've done as an adult has mostly been between New York City, where I've lived since 1971, and Los Angeles, where I grew up and subsequently returned to 1 to 3 times a year each year to see my family, and in particular visit my mother in the home she and our family lived in from 1960 to the present. The set of short poems that make up Two Towns, the title of the collection, are focused around these two locations, New York and LA. I'll just read a few of them. I might nap in a chaise lounge, warm air possible any time of year, but not really rest. Birds of paradise bushes, ornamental mandarin orange trees yield the most bitter fruit. I left there for an even more restless city. Listen, New York is never quiet or completely dark. Agitated human thought pervades everything. My dreams are forgettable, forgotten like most days. Your washed hair this morning left a patch on my cheek, wet enough to send its own cold stream running down my neck towards the shoulder. Los Angeles has many hidden wonders. It isn't as rare to see stars at night as in New York. A rainbow isn't out of the question either. In the sky, not just the kind you see over lawn sprinklers. On a winter morning after rain and wind, snow-glazed Mount Baldy. An August day in Santa Monica, red ocean, smell of rotting fish. On the left side of our block, facing north, the Shapiros, the Tushes, the Bergers, the Ralstons, the Quitners, the Benders, the Old Goat, the Cuppers. On the right side, the Blecks, the Hackles, the Frankels, us, the Dillers, the Packers, the Fells. The bodega next to the magazine store across the street sells cut flowers and fuyu fruit, Korean persimmons. I've exchanged greetings with the proprietors for years. They say my son's name, Sam, but not mine. There's much I settle for, pleasantries without content, the contempt of the ruling class as they manipulate figures of state. New York is the capital of Western capitalism, in which the inhabitants are owned more than we know. We can't seem to make ourselves remember Han Shan's naked bug, who always carried the sword of wisdom to cut down senseless craving. Here's the last one of these. When you see these poems, try not to think of me or yourself. Consider our lives as a given, our deaths too. New York and Los Angeles will die. But first, I lived there and flew from one to another. One time in a Boeing 747 passenger jet, I passed over late afternoon in the Grand Canyon. Sitting next to me was a man I thought I knew from high school, but I am remembering this all wrong. Let's see, the last pieces I'm going to read come from a work called Walkthrough Spanhex. And walkthroughs are used in, for realtors who want to, show you the inside of a house. But walkthroughs are also used in the gaming world. You go online and you can get instruction on how to play video games. And my son was very much into video games, and I, got into reading some of the walkthroughs as I watched him do the game. So I thought I would try and write a poem as a walkthrough of a free form video game. And if it seems like overwhelming and fragmented, that's what it's like for me to watch a video game that my son used to play. So it's my attempt at realism with one of the ultimate fantasy forms. Okay. Walk through span hex. Here is an organ. Play it to reveal the hidden room. Turn left, slide. There you go. 2 cloud-shaped pastilles. Swallow both and notice the lionized underlings t-shirts on your new best friends. The earth stands fast. Prove it. Active or wait. Delusions rule you for now. If active, dream making earth new from a surrounding overworld. If wait, the world will form inside you as you become what everyone else thinks. Entertain all their thoughts. Yikes. Choose amble south over scrubby grasslands. Hollywood Manor, 1950 AD, is the leftmost leaning. Builders built it in this America's most colorful area. Drink here. You see spikes against paling shields, and remember oceans. Yes, remember oceans. Go down, talk to 2 devils whose information spews through 2 doors, past vipers, down steps. Don't breathe ether. On the balcony, $100,000 or defeat. Choose neither. Repel. The pit isn't bottomless to red shoes. Sorry, yours fall off, but pink socks are okay too. Nudge past 2 chests. One is the king's, one the queen's. They're young, no obvious difference yet in their bosoms. Go left. The first discernible difference is oil. Talk to it. Here come the mad splats. Run north. Switch potions. Undo. Deshield. Fret not. Dive. Here, depress blood, egg yolks, and carbon dioxide. In everyone's own field, innocence spreads north. Recall you can spawn. The barrier-ringed hectare is too mountainous, too barren. It provides the food equivalent of a tennis court's level cross-sections. You'll be dropped to a safe point no one can hold. It hints continuously in doll talk and blade prompts. These nearby freaka, wild mustard, and dandelions warn, ignore slippery boss words, embrace sorghum. Why? The extreme leanness of Indian milk cows. Fade right, duck the macabras, take up occupations. Bushes shake where the path splits. 3 blue flying imps laugh and delay loyalty pledges. This guardian forest in Spruce Canyon devolves west. Bend, drop, shelter. Our simple fish specimens accustom water to scales. Several hundred dusty widths and handy ladders. Climb, round off, drown to the earthy point. Hold dark cloud-shaped keys. Thrust, turn, cycle them enough so walking persons forestall death instantly. Find daytime. Lanes transfer west sublime carts, tube nickels, no prevalent families anywhere in the red shadows. Begin on your honor, a running girl, your blade drawn between true 11 and true 12 a.m. Crush the overworld and its seamy delays. We'll need mother, her potions, and a bunch of buildings whose inventors look sideways, enter a bright blue tent. Press A to follow them, or B to devolve to cellular level. much slower transport, and no say-so in history. Mother says, forget B and meet my mentor friend, the left-leaning square, dark cloud strips. Go up to her. No, she runs into you. Dodge the firefights. Sell off any old stuff. White wedges on wheels are cars. Drive them. Time for the moon committee's moving mouths. Pull a steel saber. Shimmy your way to the upper landing. Lie low, breathe the cold floor drafts, and don your maiden suit. Vipers, red vipers, they bite your maiden suit and lose their venom. Hooray! Band flogging and soldier chats. Who leaves this chamber walking hasn't been sideswiped. That's you, fake devil. Refuse gentility, common truthful items. Like cotton balls, snowballs stick to our fur-shaped paper cuts. In this bald atmosphere, even dumb lies behave materially. Scrounge left for the fire world duel. Don't bother counting your shield dents. We'll leave it there for now.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you. Thank you for your touching, loving, inventive poetry. And I love both of your poetry use of particulars. You know, Blake once said particulars are geniuses and generalizations are idiots. So I always love, you know, to see what you're talking about. And you both took me right there. We have a couple minutes left, Ed, and I will ask you the same questions. When did you write your first poem?
I think I wrote them in grammar school, and I wrote them sometimes for, you know, class assignments and holidays. But I also found that if I wrote poems about books I read, that I could get out of writing book reports.
Before I ask the second, that reminds me, my wife, Holly, she was turned on to the prose poem by Amin Alwan, a Lebanese poet. And when she asked him, she said, why do you write poetry? And he said, you don't have to type. I don't have to type as much as if I wrote prose. And then the last question that I will ask you, Ed, is what attracts you to poetry?
I think it's the form that where I can best show how my mind works, and you know, offer that for interaction with other minds.
Well, that's the beginning of modern poetry in some ways, with that, you know, the prelude where Wordsworth says that the thesis of this poem is the developing mind of this young poet. You both have given so much a couple days before Thanksgiving. Thank you for your wonderful poetry. And here's our director, Jennifer Clymer, who began doing these 4-a-day-week live shows and now is doing 3 days when COVID hit. So she's just incredible. But Jennifer, what would you like to say?
I would like to say I'm hungry for chicken pot pie soup.
It's quite good.
Thank you all so much. We had an amazing amount of people attending to watch today. I apologize for the background noise there. It is not Goldfinger, it's actually a ringtone, if you can believe it. So yeah, thank you guys for being here. I hope that you can join us again in 2022. Can you believe it's already 2022?
Wow.
And this was extraordinary. And I also loved what you said, Harry, about particular versus generalization, because you're right. In those moments, you feel the specificity of not just the tangible, but sometimes, not just the emotional, sometimes the tangible. Sometimes in these poems, you can taste the chicken pot pie soup. And that's very special. It's extraordinary.
Thank you.
Thank you. Harry is back next week. Do you want to tease what we're going to see next week, Harry?
Next week, we have 6 residents who are all actors, and they're going to read the poetry from the collected poems of Stanley Kunitz. And one of the reasons I love Tim is because he kept writing even when he was 100. He died when he was 100. But I love to see that creativity keep going. And so his writing is an inspiration to me as well as many others. But that's next week.
And it's the same Zoom link. So if you want to come back and enjoy, it's the same Zoom link every week.
Great.
And Harry, thank you so much for curating these amazing, talented poets once again.
Thank you for letting us
Thank you. Thank you for having us.